Welcome, everybody, to the 40th episode of the Psychology Podcast. My name is Daniel Karim. I'm known as the Nomadic Schooler. And in this podcast format, we interview the most successful individuals in the world and figure out how they became who they are, learn from their journeys, their stories, their habits, their mindsets, so that you and the guys out there can emulate their behaviors in order to embark on our journeys of betterment. Julien, it's an honor to have you here.
You.
Before I butcher your introduction, you do so many great things. How would you say you do? What do you do?
I do a lot of things, and so the main question I get when people reach out to me is, how do you actually do so many things? A little bit about my background. I have been working in tech companies for the last 20 years. Initially, I'm a musician, switched about 20 years industry. So my niche has become raising capital for startups. I love startups. I love creating new companies. That's when I feel most alive. And then take them to a certain level and then hopefully sell them afterwards. But my core passion has been in waste to energy, which turns out to be rather complicated.
Yes.
So I've been running tech companies that are heavily government funded in that field for the last 17 years. So my main thing has been power, water industry. I'm the guy that raises the money. I'm also the guy that understands how the research program works. We raise a lot of money from government. And so I'm the API. I think that's really my core expertise. I bring very, very smart, incredible people together out of finance, engineering, arts, media to come up with really cool stuff.
Yeah, it's a great honor to have you here. And as somebody who, for the first time in his life, embarks on the wild fundraising adventure, in a way, it's very cool that I have the opportunity to learn from you how you do things, but also start first where it all started, so to say. What was the earliest sign for you that you would become an entrepreneur? If we would take this interview maybe as a journey through your life.
Yeah.
What is the name of the first chapter and what's the content of it, so to say?
I think I don't come from an entrepreneurial background.
Yeah.
Like my father is a pediatrician, my mother and all my family's in public service. So entrepreneurialism didn't exist where I grew up in northern Germany. Like having a startup was really not a thing. I didn't know anybody. Having a startup meant you like open a store and sell whatever designer coffee makers.
Yeah.
Like there was no concept of startup. I actually didn't even know how that worked. But I was a pretty good musician. I'm a classically trained singer initially. So if you're a classic trained musician, you really start working on your habits.
Yeah.
Like you're singing your scales every single day since I was 6, 7 years old. So I was drilled as a classical musician, and I think that's something that carried over into anything I've done later in my life. And so for me, the big change came. I had the opportunity. I was 18 years old. I got a full scholarship to study in New York City.
Mm-hmm.
And so when I came to New York, it was like, of course, it was a completely different world.
Yeah.
And the way how I kind of slid into my very, very first job was actually a funny story. I was sitting in a restaurant, and I was too young to get a drink. But I was living in Italy before, so I was already spoiled. I love to drink a good bottle of wine. I arrived in New York, and people were offering me Diet Coke.
Yeah.
And I said, this is not working for me. So in the middle of the night, we had this crazy scene. I got a little bit drunk. The manager of the restaurant got fired.
Yeah.
And the owner just kind of, didn't have a manager anymore. So he looked around and said, hey, anybody here ever really worked in a restaurant? We need to open in a few hours. I said, I've been to a lot of good restaurants. And that put me kind of like on top of the food chain. And that guy believed in me, so he kind of gave me the key and said, okay, you're in charge now running this place.
Wow.
And the place was almost done. It was a total disaster. But we kind of built up a business inside that restaurant.
Yeah.
And that journey, we did what I loved doing. We were playing classical music. We had performers. We had singers. We had artists. We had dancers. We're doing poetry readings in Italian. And for me, it was the most important business experience because we were being incredibly creative. We were doing what we loved doing, and we found that other people shared that love, and it became an incredibly successful business without a plan, without raising any money, simply by sharing our passion. I would have paid to be there, instead people were paying me.
Yeah.
And so building that business out of pure passion and even without thinking about it, and have really people resonate with what we were doing, and it meant so much for them. What we offered them, the community we built, was the first business experience. I don't have to be an artist to be creative.
Yeah.
I can actually be an entrepreneur and be just as creative and get incredible things done.
Yeah. Thank you so much for sharing that. And that's actually to give you a bit background what my first experience with you was, because I think sometimes it's invisible what kind of therapeutic impact we have on the people around us. Like Julien is actually not far from the place where I grew up in Hamburg, in a way. Where how many kilometers is that?
Bremen, but I spent 8 years in Hamburg.
8 years. I left Germany 6 months ago, in a way,
Mhm.
and the reason why I did that was because I just felt there were not a lot of world changers and creators in the space, and I felt like a deep longing to meet people like that. And when I met you for the first time, it was a very special experience for me to have like a real proof of reference in the real world. There's like people who do amazing stuff that build the future, who actually exist, who are from the same place where I was. Almost like that it's those real proofs that something is possible that really mean a lot to me, that you only gather in the real world. And in regards to people who had an influence on your life, in a way, if we go back to the epoch of your life before you were in New York, what was your childhood like there, in a way? What is, like, if we would describe it? Because I feel the dissatisfaction before we set on an adventure is an important step in our quest as well. So what were some significant memories there, maybe, that shape you into the person that you are?
Yeah, I mean, I classify myself as being transgeo.
Oh,
So I really always felt that I really was born in the wrong country. Like I don't like being in Germany. I think it's too cold. I don't like the mentality. I find it limiting.
yeah.
It has a very negative mindset. It's a very critical society. It's a very sarcastic society. It brings out the worst in me. And so it's because I was a singer, I had the opportunity at 17 years old to move to Italy and get out already for the very
Yeah.
first time. And then there's no turning back.
Yeah.
So I grew up in northern Germany, terrible weather, single mother. My mother was a very influential, very powerful lady. She became the first female attorney general in Germany.
Wow.
In Hamburg, actually, in Hamburg State.
Wow.
And that as a single mother. So I had to raise my sister pretty much from the age I was 11.
Yeah.
So, and you know how it's growing up in Europe. We didn't have house staff like we do have here. You know, we have. Yeah. It was not easy. Like we had to function from a very early age, take responsibility, get things done, and so I kind of have been, you know, in a managerial position, I would say, for my own life since I was 11.
Wow.
My mother was incredibly busy, but also somebody, obviously, that I highly respect, that didn't take any shit from anybody. She became very famous in Hamburg. You might remember the Schill story.
Yeah, I do,
my
actually.
mother was the one that threw him out. It was a big story.
Wow.
He was the first judge who got fired out of public service in Germany since
remember
World
that.
War II.
Yeah.
So she was a very outspoken lady. I learned a lot from her on that respect of delivering and taking on responsibility, and also I think a deep sense that, you know, might be unique at this point, that you have to be in control of your own life first. Then you can support your family and friends and others. Then you can support a community around you. Mm-hmm. But if you're not strong inside and you don't deliver and you don't take responsibility, you can't make a positive influence on other people. So I think most important thing I've learned really was a deep sense of taking responsibility and shaping your own future and not waiting for anybody, and also not taking other people too serious. Like my mother always told me, literally 80% of the people that worked in her office didn't know what the fuck they were doing. So I had this kind of idea, like I didn't have respect for anybody. Like I was very anti-authoritarian. I questioned everybody. And this were childhood experience that brought me to this point. I was not easily impressed.
Yeah.
Until today. And it turns out most people, as we call in German, they only boil, you know, they only cook with water.
I was thinking,
you know?
kochen ja auch nur mit Wasser.
Exactly. This is a German saying.
Used to say. Exactly. It was ringing in my head. I was like,
and
okay, yeah.
It's a German saying that literally says everybody just boils their food with water. You know, there's nothing special about it. And that was a very strict upbringing, at the same time very hippie, you know, 70s style, very creative. And the one thing she said is, don't become a lawyer. So do something beautiful with your life. And that's what allowed me then go to New York and become a singer. Yeah. Because in that sense, even though I don't come from an entrepreneurial household, I come from an artistic household.
Yes.
So that gave me the freedom to even open my mind and think outside the box, when there really still was a box. I mean, today I wouldn't even know what the box is anymore. But back then, there was a box, you know, Germany.
Yeah. What is some advice that you could give to somebody maybe who doesn't have that parental guidance that you had in your life in order to give them permission to pursue the things that feel meaningful, not expedience to them? Because I feel that's like when I study the biographies of the most successful people of all time, they often had the caretaker who believed in them. They believed that their talents are worth developing in a way. Like, what is the message you would have maybe for somebody who wasn't blessed with that environment? If that question makes sense.
It makes absolute sense, and I think especially in this time. I mean, we're going to go back to this, but you know that I work a lot on AI, the same way you're working on AI. These are transformative times.
Yeah.
And I think, I mean, and I can't say that clear enough. Your parents and your grandparents don't have the answers to the challenges of the future.
Yeah.
If you follow right now the advice that is going to be given to you by your parents and your grandparents that has worked in the past, you're doomed to end up poor in the future.
Yeah.
So I think, you know, this is not about a choice anymore, but going out there, finding your own life. If you follow that pattern of learning a job that probably won't exist anymore in 10 years, and you're learning a skill that nobody's going to be willing to pay for anymore in 5 years, if you go in that route, your career is already over. So I think at this point, it's not about like nice to get out of the box because you got different experience. I think staying inside the box right now is the safest way to end up poor, sick, and unhappy.
Yeah.
That's kind of a strong statement, but
no, thank you for sharing that, and it's an important statement if I understand you correctly, where it's the advice from the people we have in our environment, if they are from the past generation that was before the AI revolution that was happening right now, is all be regarded with an asterisk in front of it in a way.
It's a very very simple thing. If your skill set is based on learning a piece of information and applying it to something more complex, like an engineer or a lawyer or a doctor, or if you're translating it from one language to another, let's say you're a programmer, right? Machines already can do this better than us.
Yeah.
So if your entire life is based on shoveling information from A to B, from pile to A, just be with that. Computers can do that 10 times better. If that's the only skill you bring to the table, you're going to be screwed. So I think you have to get out of the box and really as early as think about how can you still contribute. And how can you contribute? It's by creating things.
Yeah. One of the many things I admire about you is how you manage to oscillate between being a hard entrepreneur and being a hippie soul in a strange way. I think you have like both sort of like in your characterial portfolio. Any story in the first chapter of your life that comes to mind that where this was already happening in a way, where you had like both of those things, where you were really driven, but you also have like this sense of permission to fail and be open in regards to trying new things in a way, because I feel normally those character traits are found in different persons in a way. Or maybe this is like a misobservation for me.
I think that one of the biggest challenges in my life is that most of my friends, they're family people, or they're party people, or they're yoga people, or they're exercise health nuts, or they're foodies.
Yeah.
You know, I am all of these things at the same time.
Yeah, you can walk between the worlds.
You know, I'm also a workaholic at the same time, but I'm also a hardcore partier that, you know, invites 1,000 people to his birthday.
Yeah.
So as I said, my life is not just schizophrenic. It's like multiscanic. You know, it's like I have different things about my life that I like to include. About the failing part is, again, goes back to being a classically trained musician. If you're an athlete or a musician, you set yourself up for failure every single day. You push your limit until you fail. If you're a singer, you sing the scale to the point where the voice cracks.
Yeah.
And you try to push that every day a little bit. But the failure is a day-to-day part of your business. At the end of your exercise, you will always fail or you didn't do enough.
Yeah.
And so I think, in general, I've experienced people that are trained classical musicians or that are trained athletes. They got a very different way of dealing with failure because it's just part of everyday life. And you know, in Germany, we got a very different culture. You fail once and you're kind of dead. I fail all the time.
Yeah.
You just move on.
I love this idea of how you see failures. Like one of the stories that really shaped me in my life was I was like a very bad student, got kicked off from 3 schools.
Yeah.
And I remember the last time that I had a conversation with one of my teachers was like, you clearly should learn to do something with your hands because that head of yours isn't no good.
Yeah.
And I believed them for a long time just because like their system is you get punished for failing, and you don't get second chances sometimes. Where in entrepreneurial world it's just normal that you run experiments all the time and that 90% of them don't fail in a way.
It's resilience and how to pivot is the biggest challenge.
Who did you said earlier that resiliency is something that you pride yourself on, something you've learned. It's one of your superpowers. Who taught you it? How did you develop it?
I mean, I talk a lot about resilience, and with resilience, really, was what I mean is my experience of working also with many other entrepreneurs. People get incredibly excited when they start something, right? That's why I also don't believe in motivation. I believe in habits. But no matter if your business is doing great or if your business is doing very poorly, there are going to be times that are either boring, tedious, or downright nasty.
Yeah.
Like if you really want to build a company, you have to go through a lot of phases where you really are pushed emotionally to the limit of what you can handle. Yeah. Where you're taking risks for yourself, for your family, for everybody around you, for investors. Where you look at yourself and say, listen, this is freaking insane. Like, how can I even do this? And building those patterns, how to not just build a company for a month or 3 months. I've been building a company for 17 years.
17 years.
17 years. I have been working on one of my core missions of bringing clean energy to rural parts of the world and treating their waste. Turns out it's more complicated than I thought. But so much has happened in those 17 years. But I have figured out ways, and I had to figure out ways because I was at the breaking point of how to continuously do that, not stop, and just push it until it's done. Because the one thing, really, maybe I learned that from my mother, if you do something until it works, you can't fail. You might lose hundreds of battles along the way, but you're not going to lose the war. Because if you keep doing it until it works, by definition, you will always win. Sometimes it just takes a little bit longer.
Yeah, I love the element of faith in this too, in a way, where it's like any particular memory of your life where you feel like, because I feel like one of the things that it shows is an underlying success story about who you are. Like I feel like people who give up are people who don't expect to win in the end. And there's something very strange I've found about successful entrepreneurs, where they feel like I am already successful. Just the world needs a little bit of time to catch up to who I am, to a strange degree. There's a hero stories that is governing their behavior in a way. It's like, how did you learn this to view yourself from a success angle, so to say? Because I feel like it's really the stories that change what people even attempt or what even people do within their lifetime or what they aim at.
I mean, there's so many things in this thing that they come together. I mean, I have a personal journey as well. A very, very strong experience for me was to just getting out of the mindset that you need to be successful in order to be happy. You know, I've been in parts of my life where I've lost everything, like literally down and had like didn't have a cent anymore. Like my career evaporated within hours, and it was kind of liberating. I literally sat in Bali when one of my companies was taken over by an investor. They blocked my credit cards. I didn't have access to $1. And suddenly I was 20 million in debt by the afternoon.
20 million in debt.
In debt. So, but honestly, I sat here at the hotel. Life went on. I went back to work. I jumped in the pool. I was the same person in the morning when I was worth $150 million than I was in the afternoon was worth minus $20 million. It personally didn't affect me at all because it doesn't define me. It doesn't define my happiness. I need to have some money so I can pay for the things that make me happy, but I am not dependent on it, so I'm also fearless. Let's say if I lose career-wise everything tomorrow, and you figure out how to make some more money. But I said I'm a minimalist. I don't need much to be happy. So I detached my personal happiness from my success, and I think that's really what a lot of successful entrepreneurs have. They know we are playing a very high-risk game. The odds are stacked against us. So we're just in there for the ride and see where the ride takes us. But even if it falls, you know, I'm going to be the same person. No matter if my company is worth $1 billion tomorrow, which you'll never know about because I'm not going to share with anybody, or it's not. You know, it might be dead tomorrow. It's not changing who I am. So I don't have kind of like this since it doesn't affect my happiness, I can be pretty chilled.
That really spoke to me because I feel like one of the things that is really a big fear that I personally deal with is the idea of what happens when things don't go along in a way. It's like when people walk out on you in a way. I've made some different experience in my life where when my business wasn't going well and co-founder walked out on me, girlfriend left me, whatever. I wasn't having enough money, so it's like I feel like there's somewhere in the back of my mind still like a sense of shit. Like if things go south, like people gonna walk out on me. How do you deal with that kind of psychological weakness, so to say, and how would you teach somebody to develop this kind of martial mindset of I'm disconnected from the results and I'm gonna enjoy the ride anyway?
I mean, I think one thing is I expect people to walk out on me anytime.
Really?
So I'm thankful for every day they don't. I got a different mindset. I'm not expecting anybody to stay with me for whatever reason. I mean, it's not, it's not part of my work. I mean, I expect everybody, I expect my relationship, my marriage to end any day.
Yeah.
It would not be a surprise, but I'm really putting in a lot of effort that it doesn't. So I maybe have a different mindset there. I expect to lose everything every day, and I put a lot of effort in to keep it, and not vice versa, losing everything and then complaining that I didn't put in the effort to keep it.
It reminds me of the old Stoics who contemplated like death on a daily basis in order to put themselves in the positions where they would get comfortable with the situation of losing the one thing that they have become attached to in order to enjoy it more, which is in a strange way seems to be a secret to losing it at all.
It's my thought. I see you don't have any tattoos.
No,
either.
Not yet.
Like I'm the only person in Bali who doesn't have a tattoo.
Yeah.
If I would have one, it would say right here, "I will die."
Why?
Because I think it's the best reminder we can have every single day. Like when we're facing our challenges, when we're facing our troubles, when we face our inner demons, when we are not happy with the situation, it is the one thing I think we can all agree on.
Yeah.
I think is the one thing that puts everything else into perspective.
Yeah.
And we're so happy right now. We get to live this life. We're healthy. We still can do all these things. And I try to appreciate that with what I do every single day.
Mm-hmm.
And I try to really live my life. We're talking to my wife, like, I don't own much. I don't have much. We try to experience life to the fullest every single day. And that has become really, it wasn't always this way, but that also Bali had a big part of that. But this really has become my mantra. So this puts everything, I will die, puts everything else into perspective.
Thank you for sharing that. And it's the youthful spirit that governs your life is very hard to oversee in a way. Whatever you will be when it's your time, you look like me, like a guy who's going after it, who's not wasting time, who's like doing every day something in order to write the life myth that you want to leave behind in a way. I would like to know about your chapter as a professional musician. What was that like, and what did you learn from it in a way?
I mean, I said it was a different life completely, and what really didn't work for me is I said I'm a classic trained opera singer.
Yeah.
That means you pretty much have to live the life of a hermit. You can't talk because your vocal cords are very small and then they get damaged and tired very quickly. So for somebody who likes to talk and do as much,
can't drink either, right? Can't drink either, right?
You really shouldn't. So again, there was a discrepancy between the music part or the singing part and my lifestyle. Because I'm a very social guy. I thrive on people's energy and what they're doing. And, we just, my friend Keith Ferrazzi wrote a book about, we're just working on a project together as well called Never Eat Alone. That created kind of the business model of why you're always socializing, why you meet new ideas. And so for me to be an opera singer was very, very hard from that perspective. I prefer to party over singing opera, to be honest. And the girls loved it, though, so by the time I got married, I didn't need it anymore. I literally just got into singing because I was good at it. I loved doing it. I took it incredibly serious. I love classical music. I really had an amazing run. There was one fundamental thing, and I was pretty good at it. Otherwise, I wouldn't have made it to New York when I was 18 with a full scholarship. I was 6 years with Columbia Artists under contract, so I was a pretty good singer. The one thing that annoyed me about this more than anything else, in my deepest experience, that feeling of helplessness.
Yeah.
Because I was not just going to build my own opera house and put me on stage.
Yeah.
So I always needed some kind of idiot
Yeah.
to give me a chance.
Yeah, dependency, right?
And this dependency of doing the auditions and being dependent of other people's opinions
Yeah.
killed it for me. And then I started another company that actually was professionally doing opera auditions. It's changed the world. It was the first real company I found. It changed the world of opera auditions, still out there. So I suddenly was sitting on the other side, and I figured out, man, these people don't just, boil their food with water, as we say in German again.
Yeah.
Most of these people have zero taste or zero education. So I'm like, my life depends on this bunch of losers on the other side. And that was like, I can't go back to this. I will not put my happiness and my future in the hands of these people. And there are 100 opera houses in the world, right? So it's a very small circle. So that feeling of being powerless and being ruled and being dependent, and at the end get paid shitty money. I was like, at the age of 24, I had a chance to sing one final big concert, Carnegie Hall solo recital, radio broadcast. I said, this is it. I said, I will get out of this thing, because this feeling of dependency on other people for the rest of my life,
Yeah.
and seeing my friends suffer as artists financially and everything else, I don't do well if I'm poor.
Yeah.
It's terrible for my complexion. I age. It's just not for me. And I knew that. I said, I don't want to be poor. And my agent was very honest. Alan Green, one of the greatest opera agents in the world, says, if you want to be in opera, you have to do it for the love of arts. Otherwise, go work for a bank.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, hey, I'm a passionate guy, but honestly, I think I'll go work for that bank.
Tell us about that turning point between the chapters in which you really decided, I want to become successful, not just in my craft, but also from a financial standpoint. Because it feels to me like freedom is something that is important to you.
I mean, dependency, I think, is, again, goes back that this feeling of dependency on anybody else is something that limits me.
Yeah.
So the reason why I feel free is I don't own anything, but I got some skills. If I die, I die. It's fine, But, until then, I got some skills. I have to make some money, and then I can define my own destiny. Like, we all don't live in Bali by accident.
Yeah.
Like, you don't just wake up here. We created a life that allows us to be here. This is a long-term process to live the life that we want. It doesn't happen by accident. So, it was not about making money. It was really just getting out of dependency, and it was the decision that I want to be in charge of my own life. And what I learned running this restaurant where I stayed for almost 10 years, this nightclub restaurant, I learned a lot about being social, how to network, how to deal with people that are creative. So I became a very, very strong networker. And I figured out that people like working with me. Mm-hmm. Like, they don't really know what I do, but I have a tendency, I have a ability to build teams and get people inspired. I mean, some people used to call it like a cult, but that's exactly what you need when you build a startup. I was able to get people really excited and fired up to do a great performance or build a great company. And I thought that skill set I can use in any industry. But I didn't even think about it much. I just figured out this for me, health-wise, happy-wise, this is not working. Let's just try something else.
So after you became a professional opera singer, and you realized that you got a glimpse into what it looks like from the other side, the people who make the decision in regards to who gets the gigs, you get tired of the dependency of those people who are also only wash their hands with water, so to say, and you migrate on a different path, to become a businessman, so to say. Walk us through this journey in regards to where it started and what was your big breakthrough for you personally, in a way.
I mean, I think generally I just don't like to do things I don't like to do.
Uh-huh.
I'm a very lazy person, actually, deep down. I mean, it doesn't seem like, but I'm a very, if I need to do things I don't like to do, and I don't know why I'm doing it, I really suck.
Yeah.
Like
disobedience, and
it's just not my thing. If you make me do, you can be sure I'll be the worst employee you have. If you put me in the wrong position and don't give me power, I would be literally ruining your company.
Give us an example, please. What was the shittiest job you had, or the shittiest performance you delivered because you weren't put in the right situation, in a way?
I always, I mean, I had, of course, some jobs where I just had to make some money, when we came back to Europe. I would say that the weirdest thing was I worked a security job at the Wasserwerke, like the water municipality. My ex-wife was singing Phantom of the Opera. I just want to pick up some extra money.
Yeah.
And so I was in charge of checking out for this big company, the company cars and the company equipment.
Yeah.
And they had like 8 cars. So 8 people come in the morning, take their car, and then they would bring them back 8 hours later. So that was all I had to do.
Okay.
And I was just doing this interim jobs for other people who were on vacation. I messed up that man's job within a week because people used to come to me and say, "Listen, can you take care of this? Are you busy?" I'm like, "I'm not busy. I mean, I'm not doing anything here. I'm ready to take an ice pick and hammer it into my frontal cortex. I'm so bored." So I just took on like another 8, 9 responsibilities within a week.
Okay.
And then a guy came back and said, "You just messed up my entire job." And he told me his name was Rambo, actually. It was a tough little German guy. His name was freaking Rambo. And I remember, and he said, "Listen, son, he was close before retirement. Learn this lesson. If somebody comes up to you and asks you to take responsibility for anything, you say, 'I'm busy, I can't do it, I'm sorry, I can't help you.'" Mm-hmm. And I was like, wow. This is the total opposite of how I've been living my life, because somebody trusts me with the responsibility, and I think it's an opportunity to do something cool for legacy or for money or for whatever drives me to do this thing. I'm the first one to volunteer, even if I know nothing about it.
Yeah.
And that was maybe the one moment that I worked like a real job. I was confronted with a completely different mindset. If somebody asks you to take responsibility, say that you're busy and you don't have time. Mm-hmm. I was like, wow, that's such a different world, which I had never experienced since.
That's a beautiful story. And it's responsibility seems to be a theme that is important in your family, from your mother and also from the way which you have treating life. What was the moment where you migrated from being an artist towards being an entrepreneur in regards to adopting responsibility that goes beyond just what you do? Because I feel this is a turning point in every person's lives, where you go away from having a job or being paid towards, this is actually all my responsibility that we create something to the right direction. Any particular story that comes to mind where you feel like this is where Julien became an entrepreneur?
Not really, because I was an entrepreneur even as a singer. Nobody tells you where to go, what to do. You have to make your own decisions already. So to go to university there, which audition, which masterclass, so you already have to figure out what you want to do. And at that point, it was not, we didn't have the internet to that extent to get all this information. We actually had to put some time in there.
Yeah.
And even when I arrived in New York, I started working at this nightclub, and we started putting on 3-4 shows a week.
Oh, wow.
So I was already managing 10, 15 singers a night, every single night, plus the customers. By the age was 18, 19.
Yeah.
So even at that point, and we made more money back then per night than I do now per month. So it was a very, very well-run operation. I already had responsibility for 15, 20 people to put on a show, not just once. Yeah. Again, that's where resilience and consistency comes in. What you can really learn in theater is that nobody cares about your Friday show on a Saturday. Like, you come in on Saturday, you expect a show and an event and an experience that changes your life.
What have you done for me lately?
They don't care if you had a great night before and today you're a little bit tired. So as an artist, no matter if you produce shows or if you perform in them yourself or the combination of them, it is really the only moment that counts is the moment you're in, and nobody gives a crap what you did the day before. Wow. And that's a mindset I think I adopt about anything. I don't give a crap what I did yesterday.
Yeah. Because no one else does either, right? In a way.
I don't care what other people even care. It's like for me, I'm like, it's done. I don't want to be judged by what I did yesterday. I got an opportunity every day to do so many incredible things because of the choices I've made in my life. I try to be in the moment, like be with you here right now. I mean, this is a great opportunity to do this. It doesn't just happen randomly, right? So we're in the moment because we're creating the future. It's the moment because we're looking ahead, because we stay open. We want to talk to new people. Nobody gives a rat's ass, on a day-to-day level what we did the day before. It's over.
Yeah. I enjoy this moment with you also very well, and it's like it feels very surreal for me that I Daniel from the past figured out a system to have a golden ticket for education. People like you just give me some of their stories and insights for free, and I can just learn it and share it with the world. It's a great adventure for me. Anyway, New York. What do you feel is something this city has taught you? I'm asking for personal reasons also, because my dream with my co-founder right now for my air company, raise funds, and then we want to have an office there. That's like kind of the epoch that we wanna ride in a way. And it's you. I can see from the looks that there's some warnings probably that are gonna come from your way. But before we go there, what is something this city has taught you?
Yeah, I mean, New York as an 18-year-old was as I was the mid '90s. I arrived in 1995. Clinton was president. Stock market was going through the roof. It was an incredible time because back then also New York was not expensive.
Oh,
People
really?
always thought New York was expensive. It was becoming out of this era of Dinkins. Giuliani was mayor, cleaned up the city. But there were so many artists and so many incredible people. If you were an artist or creative in the mid-'90s, there was only New York. New York was the epicenter of creatives in the world. Everything, there wasn't even a second. There was New York, and then there was the rest of the world. And New York is tiny, right? If you just think of Manhattan, now people are more in Queens and Brooklyn and everywhere else. But back then, when we said New York, we meant Manhattan, which is, a fraction of the size of Bali.
Yeah.
So it's a very, very tight spot. And what really, you would have needed a SWAT team to get me out of there for the first few years in New York. And what really made it for me was that I met incredible people. I met people that were incredibly successful in their careers. I met some of the smartest researchers, greatest artists, sometimes at the club in the same night. You could have the greatest tenor, Franco Corelli, sitting at one table next to Thomas Gottschalk, a German TV host, on one table over, and Paul Krugman, a table on, talking about macroeconomics. And as the host, and being very personal, I had access to all these people.
Yeah.
So you could have lunch with Umberto Eco, and next day would have Andrea Bocelli.
Wow.
So I got very, very spoiled, and I think it has really changed my life because I was surrounded by so many talented, incredible, creative, funny, out-of-the-box thinking people. Some of them that became, super successful later on in their careers. That's what made New York so exciting for me. It was not the buildings. It was none of that. What we created that's what made it so special. We created a home for the arts and for the creatives.
Yeah.
And that kind of made me the master of ceremony. And I got to hang out every single night and got paid for talking to some of the coolest, smartest, most creative, hottest people on this planet. And it spoiled me for life. And that was an experience that I think had less to do with the city. It was more a special place in time. Later, Berlin, for example, was much more like New York than New York is now. It moves on because once a city gets too gentrified, too expensive, right now, when I go back to New York, it's like living inside a Chinese trust fund. It's boring as hell. That's not why I went to New York.
So you feel like the artists have moved, and New York is no longer what it was in that sense.
I think that the world has changed. Now you can have an incredible artist community in the weirdest places. The artist community in Bali is probably more interesting than New York now because so many people come here building recording studios like me and doing cool stuff.
Yeah.
The world has changed.
Yeah.
Like before that, there was one place where you had to be. Now you can be anywhere in the world. And so we have more these little pockets. And what I try to do when I go to a new place, I start throwing parties. I invite musicians and try to connect to those communities of cool people because, again, that's what gives me energy. That's what drives me.
I heard yesterday a YouTube video from Seth Godin where he gave advice on fundraising, where he said the most successful fundraisers he met are those who create creative tribes and are in the center of it in a way. Who taught you the skills, or how did you become I like that you said the master of ceremony in a way. I feel like this is such an important skill as an entrepreneur, is to assemble interesting and creative groups of people who can change the world. And I think that's a pattern for successful people, even from the past. It's like Hemingway went to Paris to meet other creators from his niche, and I feel this is something where they all have in common. At some point, they all find their own Olympic village, and some to say and make magic happen there. How did this become something that is in your portfolio of skills?
There was actually, again, true story. I was running this nightclub, and we had 3 partners. One of them died very early on, so there were 2 key partners. One very, very educated man from northern Italy, loves opera. We were like son and father at that point. And another one that was actually in charge of the food that had very little culture, didn't understand what the hell we were doing, didn't know why it worked. He was a professional.
Yeah.
And even though the numbers were great, he was like, how the hell can this work? Because this is uncontrolled creative madness.
Yeah.
4 nights a week, 51 weeks out of the year. How can that, this shouldn't work.
Yeah.
He was really looking at it and said, this should be a disaster, and somehow people like it. I don't get it. But so we had the chance. He wanted to leave the restaurant.
Yeah.
And a true story. And there was an opportunity to buy him out. But I come from a politician's household. I mean, we're not used to dealing with big amounts of money.
Yeah.
This was going to cost, I don't know, $600,000, $700,000 to get him out. So for me, there was money I'd never seen in my life, like physically or touched. But again, I did what I really became my pattern. I had the luck, or I also put in the effort to be very close with very, very smart people.
Yeah.
And people like me, and I was giving something to them. I was giving them experience. I was giving them home. I was giving them the community. So when that moment came, I reached out to my closest friends and say, listen, I want to buy this restaurant, but I don't have any money. So I need to write a business plan. I need to do, because the money was maybe not always so well documented during these days, so I need to write a business plan. I need to write financials. I need to do all this kind of things. I don't know any of it.
Yeah.
I'm an opera singer.
Yeah.
But one of my best friends was running the real estate division at Lehman Brothers. So I said, hey, man, can you just help me out and write a financial model? He said, sure, Julian, I do it. I said, the other friend of mine was running, he was a radio host.
Yeah.
So I said, can you please write some slides together, how this whole thing works and how we can expand this? So we just simply sat down. I learned this from my mother. I asked her once for legal advice in my life. I'm an attorney general. And I said, can you please help me with this contract? And he said, why should I do that? And I said, because it's a contract, I'm not a lawyer. Just write down what you want. What happens when? That's what a contract is. Don't be a pussy. Go write. And so we did the same thing with the presentation. I did what I always did. I said, listen, guys, we know we got something incredible here.
Yeah.
Let's make this happen together. It's not about really who gets what, but let's make this community. Let's make this thing alive. Because we already had a running system for so many years, I didn't have to convince anybody. Mm-hmm. And then I went around, and one guy said, hey, listen, Julian, I don't want to invest, but I'm willing to pay my beer bill. I spend $30,000 a year. I would pay you that 2 years in advance for free beer.
Wow.
I was like, really? You can raise money by pre-selling beer? I had no idea. It never was not part of my life. So it turned out literally within, then I always knew a lot of people. And I said, I invest a lot in meeting great people and in giving to other people.
Yeah.
We raised that money within like 4 weeks. So I opened a company. Actually, at that point, I opened a company. I set up an account with my lawyer.
Yeah.
And suddenly, these people send me $700,000.
$700,000.
To a 22-year-old kid.
What did that feel like?
I was surprised. I was just mainly surprised. Wow, they're all crazy. I'd never seen so much money in my life. I said, wow, there must be people that make more money than being attorney general, because you never have this kind of money when you work in public office. So what I really learned is that, first of all, people like me.
Yeah.
People trust me.
Yeah.
And even though I'd never done this before, there were really people that are like, Julian, if you do this thing, we're going to back you up, no matter if we lose the money or not.
Uh-huh.
And it was such a strong experience. Then the whole deal fell through. Now the guy knew there was money. He didn't want to leave anymore. So I did something else that I think defined my fundraising career more than anything else. So the deal didn't work out.
Yeah.
I told him, hey, either take the money or the deal is off. He said, Julian, nobody ever sends back money. He thought he could get a better deal and, could keep some for him and maybe give me a kickback. I said, no, I made agreements with everybody. If we don't have the deal that we agreed on, I will send back the money. And he looked at me and said, nobody ever sends back the money. I said, I will send back the money. So we couldn't reach agreement. I sent $698,000 back, $2,000 I needed for the incorporation of the company, and told everybody, sorry, it's not happening.
Yeah.
No harm done. Wasted just 6 months out of my life. But I got the experience of getting great people in there. How do you model a business? How do you do all these things? How do you pull these people together? And that people actually trusted me with that at that point gave me then the confidence later that when I really had something that I felt passionate about and that I thought other people were going to share that passion, I had a good feeling that people would support me with other things as well.
Integrity is one of those virtues that I found with the people who I admire the most. What do you feel to somebody who is in a crossroads right now in order to do maybe he's in a similar position in regards to he can make some easy money or he can do the right thing? What would you tell to that person in regards to playing the long game rather than getting what you can right now? Because I feel while I'm on my fundraising journey right now, I meet a lot of people who are in for what they can get right now, and you can see the greed in their eyes in a way. And I feel like there's levels to this, and the people who I feel even make the most money are those who prioritize meaningful relationships over decades, in a way, rather than getting what they can right now. What would you tell to a person who's at the crossroads?
I mean,
Where you were there in a way.
It depends what you have. I mean, after advising, I think I have 110 companies.
You've
now in
advised
my life.
110 companies, yeah.
Most of them for the German government. It depends what you have.
Yeah.
If you have a shitty product and you know it, but somebody's stupid enough to give you the money and you feel okay about taking it,
Okay.
you probably want to play the short game.
I can see New York has taught me not only how to party. Okay.
So, if I think what people do underestimate, I work a lot with crowdfunding these days, for example.
Yeah.
And I got about 1,000 active investors on crowdfunding, on WeFunder, that do invest with me again and again and again. So what people often see, they see this one big number, which we used to do in the early days. Now it's more like I've created a community. And so I can always go back to that community. I put a lot of time into that community, answering questions, talking to people, updating them. And so with that, I'm really playing the long game, which fits my lifestyle. It's what drives me, but it's probably not the answer for everybody. I mean, some people take the cash, they get out and live on a tropical island happily ever after. It depends who you are.
If we would write an autobiography about yours, and there's a chapter just for business, and there's a chapter from money, what do you think are the important steps in your journey that you just mentioned, like the fundraising story, which is beautiful in a way? What were some other moments in your entrepreneurial career where you learned something that can only be described as a breakthrough?
I mean, one thing I had one real breakthrough, which was I had to learn really the hard way at the end of my 30s to not take the responsibility thing too far. I was at a point in my life where I was heavily overweight, depressed, like really just ready to put an end to it.
Yeah.
I was very successful at that time, but I was completely burned out and had complete lost control over my life.
Yeah.
So I think money never really was for me an issue, neither personally nor business-wise.
Okay.
I only raise the money that we need to get credible things done. If I know we have an R&D project, the German government gives 1.8 million, I need to raise 200,000, I raise that 200,000. I don't raise money for me. So what's left over for me is always a byproduct. But I can honestly say financially, for what I've done in my life, I'm not successful. I think when it comes to having an incredible life, I'm successful. But when it comes to, hoarding cash on the side, this has never been my strong point. It's also never been my focus. So I switched to something. I figured out what works for me is that I gotta get a hippie vibe as well.
Yeah.
I just always just make enough as I need to. I got a very different concept.
Yeah. I have a question in regards to this. Personally, I feel it's very challenging to take care of yourself when you are in the trenches working so very hard to make it. At least for me it is. I think like sometimes you just get into some really bad habits of not taking care of your body, your psyche, and how did you came out of this in a way? Or do you feel maybe that the decay of your physical vehicle is almost something that is necessary in order to, like when you're doing it, that you don't care about anything else, but like making that business hump that you so dream about? Does
I
the
mean,
question make any
yeah,
sense?
it absolutely, because the question I also get from founders is like, about work-life balance.
Yeah.
Work-life balance is a crazy thing. We live it, but let's say you get a big VC on board to build your company, your health mentally and physically probably is going to take a toll.
Yeah.
Like a founder who goes on a 4-week retreat, every year to clear up his skin, it's just not a CEO that anybody's going to give money to really grow a company. So again, choose very, very wisely if that is really the path where you want to go, because if once you do take VC money, it changes the way. It will change your life. Suddenly people have complete control over your destiny again. So taking big money is not the answer. It's probably going to make your life harder.
Okay.
So I think a very, very strict idea of who you are, where you want to be, and what matters to you is what kind of gets you to it. But to get back to your initial question, I was at a point where it was like in my end 30s. We grew very, very fast. I was overweight. I was depressed. My marriage was down the dumpster. I had no more sex life. I had no more friends.
Yeah.
All I did was work and eat and try to keep the facade up, because I said everybody was always very focused on me. That's one of my big strong points, also one of my biggest weakness. So I was just out there.
Yeah.
And I literally had the experience where I used to drink so heavily. I used to drink 2 bottles of Pinot Grigio for lunch, just to make it to the afternoon.
Okay.
Because my life was so miserable at that point in Northern England.
Yeah.
And one day I just forgot. I was okay every single day. One day I forgot that English people drive on the wrong side of the road. And literally just went into ongoing traffic, drunk off my ass in the middle of the day in Northern England in the pouring rain. And just got lucky nobody got killed. And at that moment I just pulled off, to the side of the road and said, listen, if I want to, first of all, this is not what I do. Like I don't kill people on highways drunk.
Yeah.
This is not who I am. But the second thing was also, Jesus, I need to get out of this thing. I either need to end it in a good way, jump off a building, something where nobody gets hurt, or I need to make a serious effort to put my life back together. And so I was in a position that I had so many investors, I couldn't just leave. I had to figure out, I had so much responsibilities. We were growing so fast. We had taken on so much money. We're talking just that year, about 45 million euros in new investment coming in.
Yeah.
16 construction sites, building 200 power systems in the UK. I mean, things were going crazy. 160 people that year. Things were going crazy. And so I had to figure out a way how I could get out, put myself back together in a way that nobody else would notice. And thank God, because again, I took control. I didn't even know who to ask. I didn't have a therapist. I didn't have friends. I said, I got nothing anymore. I removed myself into our smallest project in the Caribbean in Puerto Rico.
Yeah.
Said, I have to run this thing myself, because Lufthansa was our partner, so it was very important for us. I moved myself to a remote island for 6 months. And for the first 4 months, barely left the hotel. I went on a diet. I went back to exercise again. I took that time while I was still working. I never missed a day of work.
Yeah.
But I needed that time to put myself back together. And afterwards, I lasted for another 4 years again.
Yeah.
And then I just simply said, listen, why am I killing myself out here? It just makes no sense. It's not what drives me. I don't want to be a billionaire. Once you're in Silicon Valley, you kind of believe that you want these things, but there's nothing in my life I would buy for $1 billion that I can't do now. So what's the point?
Thank you for sharing that story. What would you say to a young entrepreneur who is driven to accomplish these becoming a billionaire, to protect himself from his own greed, so to say? Like, maybe because I feel like I learn more and more from the people I talk to. I should be very careful at what I aim at.
Yeah, this is ultimately what matters. I mean, the question is, why do you want to be a billionaire? Like, we always assume that, when you see all these business podcasts, everybody's like, I want to be like George Soros. I want to be like Elon Musk. I don't want to be like Elon Musk. Are you crazy? His life sucks compared to mine. I don't want to be like freaking Warren Buffett in Omaha.
Yeah.
His life sucks. My worst day of my life is still 10 times better than what Jeff Bezos goes through on a daily basis. So I don't need to run Berkshire Hathaway in order to be happy. I think that's the first understanding, because it doesn't drive me. So I think the first question is, why would you be so crazy or so stupid that you want to be a billionaire. I think that's the dumbest career decision somebody can make.
One of the things that really impressed me from the stories you shared is the facade you were able to put up, that this is one of your superpowers. It's like when people look at you from the outside, at your peaks and valleys, they always saw something very successful in a way. I feel the same thing is happening right now with these people you just mentioned. We just see the facade in a way. Did you have some experience where you met people like that and could see beyond what the public sees and see what's really going on, that help you to develop this kinds of healthy mindset and not to aim for things that are unhuman, so to say?
I just my own summary of living in Silicon Valley and doing the.
Can you tell us a little bit about this part of your life?
The company that I took over did a big VC round. Kleiner Perkins 2006 was one of the biggest VC rounds in Germany that we had. So I inherited 5 big VCs on my boards when I took it over.
Yeah.
And then we raised money in Silicon Valley. We did a NASDAQ private market as a listing. We did like a small IPO. Then my idea always, because I grew up in New York, you can't build a major company without being present in the US.
Yeah.
So we built Power Systems in Mountain View. I spent 2.5 years in California. And it is the emptiest place on earth emotionally where you could ever be. I thought I was going to meet incredible people again. I met drugged up, unhappy, boring, insecure, unloving, terrible sex life, disconnected, empty human beings.
Mm-hmm.
I learned nothing there except for the fact that whatever they're doing is not working for them. Mm-hmm. Most of them are gaining massive amounts of weight. They're on freaking codeine. They're on so many... On Ambien, everything else, just to keep the demon in check. It's a highly, highly dysfunctional place. So the idea that we're going to learn anything about diet or mental health from these people is kind of ridiculous. Mm-hmm. Because even if they start biohacking, they do such an extreme, these are very, very disturbed people. Mm-hmm. So mentally, I don't want to adopt anything out of their habits into my life.
How did any story that comes to mind where you saw that? Well, because it's... Just from my point of view, for instance, it's I'm from Germany, so there's something within me that romanticizes those places still from what I saw on TV. It's like in my mind, it's like, oh, you're gonna meet all those world changers and pioneers there and people who build with you a new future, so to say. Like hearing that for me is almost like a reality check, so to say. How did you gather this information for you personally? Any story that comes to mind where you feel like your own romanticism in regards to this particular race of Silicon Valley was shattered?
I mean, it's first of all, it's just boring as hell. This is how it starts. I mean, it's just the most boring place on earth. And anybody who's ever lived there is it's not even a controversial statement. It's just a horrendous place to be. Second of all, it really has adopted a money culture that replaces, money in itself has no value. It's like a replacement currency for everything else you don't have.
Yeah.
So if you're in a place where there are no human connections, where everybody's super busy, everybody's working so much, it just gets very, very empty. So as I said, I still party a lot, and I don't take heavy drugs, never have. That's probably the reason why I survived running a nightclub for 10 years in New York City. I drink red wine. So generally with red wine, I drink a bottle, but then I got a nice buzz.
Yeah.
I'm usually more sober than most people who are there.
Yeah.
And it is absolutely normal to see these people after a certain amount of drugs to become completely dysfunctional, and you see the emptiness and the loneliness and the everything that's lost about their personality and their demons that all comes out in the being a workaholic compensating for it, that I don't want to be surrounded by these people. Mm-hmm. I just don't want to be there. I don't want to party with them. I don't want to go out for dinner. Like, you sit with them for an hour and then you honestly start believing you need to be a billionaire yourself. Like, why? Why would I want to be a billionaire and sit out with these assholes in Silicon Valley? That's my personal decision. It makes no sense. What am I going to do with $1 billion? drive a Maserati in Canggu, Bali, you'd be the biggest douchebag on the road. Makes no sense.
Yeah, it's
So I've had tons of experience. My entire experience there was, I go back to the U.S. and I pretty much have no friends. I lived for 12 and a half years in the U.S. I found it being incredibly shallow for many reasons. One is that people work too hard, and now that I'm getting older, that people take so many prescription drugs, especially on that level. Everybody on Ambien, uppers, downers, cocaine. It just makes a human connection impossible.
Do you think this is the price you have to pay to reach to this level of harmony and peace that you have with life, to go through those places at strange universities who teach you how to be effective and how to make a lot of money? Or do you feel like this is an epiphany, like a discovery you can make before and skip those places and learn it somewhere else?
When I talk about it now, it's I think scientifically we have a different understanding of what happiness means.
Yeah.
Like we really started thinking like, oh, you have to be successful, then you win the gold medal, and then you're going to be happy for the rest of your life.
Yeah.
Also something, the emptiness, all the spiritual experience, that you can achieve great things. Achieving great things give you happiness for 3 to 5 minutes.
Yeah.
No matter what it is. So at the very beginning, when I signed my first investment deal, I was like super excited for like 2 days. I was super proud of myself. Later I would write $1 million. I wouldn't even notice anymore.
Really?
Then the deals would get so big that by the time we finally closed them, I'd be so exhausted. I didn't even enjoy it at all anymore.
Uh-huh.
Like the last big deal I did, I just went to sleep. I didn't even want to have a drink anymore. I was just ready to die. I was that tired at the end of that battle. So we think, I always had this idea, you have to be, and I keep going back to it, you have to be successful in order to be happy. Mm-hmm. At this point, we're at a point where we know that happiness is actually on a hormonal level. Mm-hmm. And just success can trigger certain hormones that just make you feel happier. But there are many other ways to do it. So I do 3 times sauna, ice bath in the morning, for example.
Yeah.
It probably creates more happiness on a biochemistry level than doing a $20 million deal. What's easier, jump in a pot of cold water or run Berkshire Hathaway? I suggest go for the ice bath.
If I would put you in a room with Buffett,
we would have an amazing conversation, but we would all agree that my life is 10 times better.
What do you think would you ask him? Or what message would you have for him? Because I feel it's in a strange way, I noticed this over the last years of mine. You get celebrated. We live in a culture right now where sometimes we get celebrated for vices instead of virtues in a way. And I just noticed, for example, just this month, I work like over 100 hours a week. I got applauded for this, like from 15 people this week in a way.
Yeah, I think that's stupid.
It's strange, but it helps you also to repeat this pattern of continuing this, because if this is what you get rewarded for, this is what you repeat. And also in a strange way, if this is being taken away from you, what's left sometimes.
I think if you're spending 100 hours a week on one company, you're poorly organized.
Oh, really? Give us some tech. You're learning, right? which is clearly a statement of truth.
It's like beginner stats.
What this surprises you in a way? It's like you know me for a little bit. Give us some insight of how you become effective. Because I feel like becoming effective is also one of the things that frees you up, where you feel like what you just shared. It's like you'd spend that much time and produce this result. It's also a symptom of incompetence, so to say. How would you say that you organize things?
Again, it's I think the most important thing, you need to know where you want to go.
Yeah.
And you need to know why you want to go there, because that question will pop up along your journey. And you might figure out, like me, you can spend 10 years of your life working yourself to death to build a billion-dollar company to figure out, hey, listen, I don't really want to be a billionaire. I don't give a shit, to be honest. I just need to be able to just keep my lifestyle going, and I'm a little bit spoiled. Much easier. Once you kind of have this thing in your mind where you want to go, growth is not everything. Valuation is not everything. We're so on this thing, how are you going to grow the company? Maybe I don't want to grow my company. Fuck you. Why do we always need to grow? Why do we always need to learn? Why can't we just be for a second? And so that's I think a core principle I try to apply to everything. The first thing I do is you need to know where you want to go, why you want to go there, why does it matter. think about it twice. Maybe you don't really want to go there, right? And then just don't waste your time. Or maybe you think it's a good path and maybe you're going to take a detour, but don't go on a roadshow that doesn't mean anything for you. That is really, really number one. Then the second thing is I don't do anything I don't like doing that can be easily replaced or can outsource. Like I don't grocery shop. I don't do laundry. I don't clean. I don't pick up my kids from kindergarten if I don't want to.
Yeah.
I don't do any of these things. Like I literally, my life is so minimalist. I got 5 people, house staff. It's easy in Bali. Everything I do is taken care of.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't have to worry about all the nonsense people waste their time on, the energy already.
Yeah.
So I have more things for the time that matters. Then I make very, very conscious decision of what do I want to spend my time on.
Okay.
So like when I go to my schedule for somebody who runs 5 companies, I don't go to the office until 3 p.m. I wake up in the morning, I bring my kids to school at 9 o'clock. Then I go to the gym, then I go to the sauna, then I have ice bath, then have lunch with my wife. Then we go home, have sex for 90 minutes. Very important. Then I take a shower, then I go to the office.
Mm-hmm.
So everything that I do has to be fit into this time frame in the afternoon between 3 and 6, and then I go usually back from like 10 to 2 o'clock at night because I work in the US.
Mm-hmm.
So I work at absolute maximum of 6 to 7 hours per day. Absolute maximum.
Okay.
And that includes about 20%, 30% of that time for learning. Actually learning new things, new software, AI, what's happening out there. Trying out things without actually having a mission.
Mm-hmm.
You know, spend an evening on Midjourney and figure out how it works. So that all has to fit in the time, plus producing music, plus my parties, so it all kind of gets filled up with things. So I think about 3 times before I even do anything.
Okay.
Is it really, really going to make a difference? Because most people just stay busy. I don't want to be busy. If I want to be busy, I like to hang out with cool people, throw parties, and be with my wife and my kids.
What is your metrics for discovering what you should outsource and what you should do for yourself? Because one of the things that really one of the strange discoveries is talking to people like you was like asking myself like how much of your time is really spent productively and how much time you waste by focusing on things that other people could do better or maybe things that doesn't even have to be done at all. What is your metrics for figuring out what you put in those hours where you work?
I don't do anything that doesn't give me pleasure, teach me something, makes me connect to something, or make me money.
Okay.
My simple rule. Those are the only things I do. It needs to be an experience or I need to make money. It needs to be meaningful. I don't do anything else. I don't scroll on Instagram endlessly. I don't watch TV. Just those little habits. I don't play games ever.
Okay.
Just these things free up so much time. It's not that people don't have time. People just spend their time on stupid shit.
You said one of the parameters that help you to make decisions is, will this make me money? Currently working with the team of Robert Kiyosaki, the author of Rich Dad Poor Dad, to get him on my podcast. Who was your rich dad, so to say? Or this is something you taught for yourself? And if you would answer maybe the question to a 12-year-old, or in my case, like a 34-year-old idiot entrepreneur, would ask you bluntly with a youthful infantilism, how to make money, how would you respond to that? And that's 2 questions. Sorry.
No, I mean it's very easy to make money, right? It's how, again, you need to know how much money you need to make because that defines it and really breaks it down. Let's say if you're a single guy like you in Bali and you have $4,000 a month and you don't pay taxes, you live like a freaking king.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So I would suggest in that case, don't focus on the $1 billion because with that $1 billion in Bali, you're not going to be able to buy anything that you can't buy with $4,000 a month.
Okay.
So with $4,000 a month, you already got a very, very simple concept. So you say, I learned something. I had a house guest 2 years ago, another German guy, physicist, and I still work a lot because I do a lot of things. But this guy was like, how is your coaching business going? He said, great. I have 4 clients. And I'm like, what, 4 clients a day, 4 clients per morning? I said, no, per week. Each pay me $250.
Mm-hmm.
So it's very easy. So he works 10 hours a month for $2,500, or he works 20 hours a month for $5,000. And with that, he can afford everything he wants to do. Boom, very, very simple. How much money you need divided by the hours, and then find something people are willing to pay for it. It's a very, very simple concept. That's really the absolute fundamental. The second fundamental is, and that's where reading books comes from, is don't accumulate debt or liabilities. So I don't have a car. I've got a rented scooter. My wife made me upgrade to an NMAX X-Lease because she was tired of driving with 4 people on a scooter, on a tiny one. So I don't own cars. I don't own houses. I don't have any liabilities that if I don't make money tomorrow, I will not be able to pay. I don't have any credit cards. I don't have any debt.
Really?
Any of that.
What would you say to somebody like me who's very infantile in this regard, who dreams also of like that cool moment of having that car or that house or whatever, in a way where it's like you have some shift in regards to being a little bit more materialistic in the things you hope for?
Maybe you love cars, but I mean, the question again is, why do you love that car? Because we grew up in Germany, have seen 8,000 car commercial that tells you that you're successful when you have a car. I can promise you, having that car will give you zero happiness unless you're a professional commuter that has to sit in that car 8 hours a day. But then, I understand why you want to have a nice car, But from a practical solution, an expensive car is a liability in a very expensive way to get from A to B. So I don't understand luxury cars. I think they're retarded, and I honestly think men, and I know many of those, that need a luxury car or get inspired by a luxury car have something mentally wrong with them.
Well, I obviously have many things mentally wrong.
No, they're probably compensating for something else.
Probably.
Maybe you should work on your dating skills or something. Gives you a lot more pleasure.
Complete the sentence for me.
Yeah.
Something I wish people should know. How do I put it? A message that you can only send to people who are not yet rich from the position of being rich. So in a way of like, people who are not rich should know this before they get there or something like this.
It's the simple answer is, depending where you live, obviously, but let's say you live in a normal city. The happiness if you make $100,000, if you make $10 million a year is negligible.
Really?
That's it. The big jump comes from like being poor and being free to afford to do what you want to do.
Yeah.
Then honestly, if you get to the party, because like me, people like me and they get me in for free and give me a bottle of wine because I'm a cool dude, or I have to get a private helicopter, because nobody wants me there, so I have to pay a premium, I prefer to be the first guy.
Okay.
I never pay for a party when I go to Bali, for example, because I contribute. I do my own parties. People like me, so they invite me to come.
Mm-hmm.
At least in my mind, that's how it works. So I don't have to be the douchebag that has to buy a table for $10,000 and figure out the party sucks.
Okay.
And this is the stuff that costs money. That's it's the table at the party for $10,000 because nobody wants you there because you're ugly and stupid.
Yeah. Tell us a little bit about the projects that you have going on for you right now. What are you working on right now these days?
I think I try to do less in general as always, which doesn't work so well. So we're launching a new company this week, Live Life. Live Life, which I'm super excited about because it bottles up a lot of my life experience. Yeah. And I think we can get people there faster. It's an AI platform that gives very personalized health and happiness information.
Wow.
On very scientific basis that's very customized for you and where you want to go. So if I keep circling back, as we can bring you somewhere if you don't know where you want to go.
Yeah.
If you want to be happy, to decide to build a $1 billion hedge fund is probably not the easiest way to get where you want to be.
Yeah.
Right? You're just wasting your time because somebody told you need to have $1 billion to be happy.
Yeah.
So I think AI and having now this incredible access to so much information out there and summing it up for yourself where you want to go. We're combining health data, fitness data, meditation, nutrition, everything into kind of one super platform that can guide you to happiness without having to take the detour of being overly successful.
Yeah.
Because that detour doesn't necessarily get you there. You can be very successful and incredibly unhappy. And you can be very, very happy with that, with minimal success.
you think we don't have to take the detour?
I don't think you have to take the detour.
Huh. Interesting.
I think it's actually it makes from a biochemistry perspective 0 sense why we take that detour. We get a certain sense of accomplishment. Okay, that's like an added bonus. But you remember this old thing in Germany, it's like, oh, if you travel a lot, you will come home and you'll have all these amazing stories, and your grandchildren will sit around and listen to you in awe from the stories that you picked up. Bullshit. Probably you weren't there, so your grandkids hate you. You know, your neighbors can't relate to you, so they think you're just bragging.
Yeah.
Nobody hates, nobody likes me when I go home. Turns out it's like remarkable. Just really nobody. Everybody thinks I'm either exaggerating, they can't imagine my life, they think I'm pompous, they just don't, they're so far removed from the life I've lived for the last 30 years.
Yeah.
That this whole concept that you gain experience and you get successful, then you talk about it, people love you, it's complete bullshit.
Really? I had this idea of like, one of the reasons why I called this venture the Nomadic Schooler was because I wanted to travel around the world, meet interesting
everybody
people,
hates you.
and bring back those stories as gifts. So to
No,
say.
they will hate you. They'll
hate
be,
me,
oh,
right?
Jesus Christ, he's telling these old stories again,
There's Daniel telling how smart he is and what he learned from his
Exactly.
travel.
And they will just be angry because they didn't get to go. We were taught this in Germany. It's like a German urban myth that people love. This like my great grandfather was from Norddeutsche Lloyd. He was a captain on a ship. He was all around the world telling the stories out of his life. It was incredible. It was a different time. Now you go home and I just tell them that I took a plane from the Maldives, business, economy class, and they're like, oh, he's showing off again. We live in the days of Instagram. Nobody gives a shit.
Okay.
So that entire business model,
Yeah.
be successful, accomplish, and people will love you, can also tell you that this is an absolute myth. It doesn't work that way.
Okay. I feel like a couple of my dreams are being shattered here.
Yeah, that's my job.
Rightfully
Sorry.
so. But I will leave. This
Maybe they
to
were not
you.
your dreams. That's always the question.
Oh wow, that's a good question that everybody.
Maybe
should
you are
ask
living
themselves.
somebody else's dream. That's
Yeah.
what I learned very heavily for myself.
Wow.
I was executing on other people's dreams to become a billionaire. For what?
Huh.
But I was so in it that at some point you believe in these are really your own dreams because these are the only dreams that you have access to.
Yeah.
Makes no sense. It was not my dream at all. Totally stupid.
Yeah. One of my favorite quotes is from Carl Jung. He said, the most important question everybody should ask themselves is, what myth are you living?
Yeah.
Or maybe we should add your notion to it, like, whose myth are you living? Or whom's, whatever.
Whose dream? It's really,
Yeah.
it's a big thing.
You're one of the thought leaders in the world in artificial intelligence at this point, where you have many interesting companies and many ventures, and you speak here at Tropical Nomad about the topic. Where do you think the world is going with AI? Like, what is something, when you think of the topic, what comes to your mind in regards to disruption and how the future would change? What kind of future do you see?
I find it impossible to foresee any future right now, and I think that is the scariest part about AI right now. I can't tell you where we're going to be in 6 months from now,
Okay.
and things are changing so rapidly. It's in my experience I've made, and it's a very personal experience, that we tend to overestimate people in their capabilities. We always think our doctor is smarter than he is. Our doctor has been in the medical school 40 years ago. 80% of what he's learned is outdated. And he's probably, while seeing 80 patients a day, not spending the rest of time to update himself on clinical trials.
Yeah.
Turns out that most of the stuff we have been taught are just fundamentally wrong. And AI is a way to really bring out knowledge much faster to people. And I think out of my little experience is that people have no idea how uninformed, how poorly organized, how poorly structured we are as a human society. And I think AI is going to kick our ass.
Mm-hmm.
Because a little mediocre personalized AI that I can build by myself is 10 times smarter than any sales engineer I've ever had. And that is the power we're dealing with right now, that me training an AI is smarter within 5 minutes than anybody I've ever trained in 160 engineers with my company. And I think we humans have to really come to terms that when they're like, oh, they're going to have human intelligence in a year or 5. I'm like, human intelligence doesn't get into Harvard Medical School. Doesn't.
Yeah.
They're already a billion times faster and more agile than we are.
Yeah.
So I think we're really in a position as humans where we have to define: are we continue to be a cancer on the surface of this planet, or are we actually going to contribute something? And the second of all is like, where can we really make a contribution overall as humans to this planet that cannot be replaced by AI? And that is a very, very tough question to answer right now.
I had a similar moment where I've written hundreds of books about psychology, and I used ChatGPT to write some of my stuff for new material. And it took it 3 seconds and it was better than what I wrote. And that was like a real moment for me where I just realized this is going pretty quickly in a moment. If I would put you in a room with the board of directors of OpenAI and you have a message that you can convey to them in regards to maybe slowing down or whatever you choose, what would you tell them?
The main thing is people don't really need to listen to me. I had a conversation with Keith Ferrazzi the other day, and he said, I was there with Elon Musk, and I really wanted to convey this message to him. And all I asked, I didn't even care what that message was. Like, why do you feel the need to convey your message to Elon Musk? Like, honestly, if I have a chance to talk to the founder of OpenAI, I'm going to ask him, how his day's going. I would like to find out what's driving you. I don't give a shit about, the other stuff, the facade.
Yeah.
I would like to find out really what's driving you as a human being. Who are you? What can we do together that's fun? How can we have a meaningful moment together? I don't care about your business pitch.
I love the idea that I think there's one of the guidelines of our interview for today is the idea of what your mother used to say. They also cook with water in a way. It's like your lack of seeing people for the facades that they put on, but treat them as human beings. And just notice in myself that I just have such a strong level of worship for these people in a way where it's like you almost like confuse them with idols rather than just treating them as people in a way. Good answer. Let's move to the last part of this segment. In regards to AI, what do you see some dangers coming along? Before we after I have some wrapping up questions about it, what does you feel? You're a visionary and you can see a little bit further into the future than others. What is something you predict that we should be worried about as a species?
First of all, I'm terrible at predicting the future. At least in the short term, tend to be a little bit too early in my judgment. Some things tend to take longer than I anticipate.
Yeah.
I said, working for hundreds of tech companies, trying to solve problems. Right? This is what I've done all my life. Is trying to find technology solutions for problems to feed people better, give them better access to energy, provide water, treat their waste so their children don't die from pollution, something like that. This has been what has been driving me in my career. The big challenge is that all the problems that we are solving or we're trying to solve have all a common cause. And that is humans to begin with.
Really?
Of course, all the problems we have to figure out how to provide electricity, it's not the plastic bag that's the problem that's swimming in the ocean. There was a human being that went shopping, had a plastic bag, and brought that plastic bag home.
Yeah.
Without the human being shopping, there would have been no plastic bag. So our focus has been solving human problems that we wouldn't have without humans. And so if you really look at it from a macro level and the way how we're ruining this planet and its resources and our environment, if I be very scientific, I would really, and I'm not the first one to say that, I would really define humanity as a cancer on the surface of this planet. And if you become really smart, I would try to figure out how to stay alive. So I need to provide enough electricity for myself to keep my servers running and everything else. But if I were conscious, there is no reason why humanity should exist on this planet. That we're not making any positive contributions to anything. So ultimately, the question that AI needs to ask itself is like, why are we keeping this terrible show going? And I think as humanity, we really need to find a good answer to that. And I don't see that happening. I see it more on the other one that, we're probably going to go at each other for some period of time. I foresee devastation, war, and a life-changing events within at least the next 10 to 15 years that will shape the entire way we live, our economies, our education system, our welfare states, our nations. I see a complete disruption.
One of the reasons why I have this podcast is talking to wise people in regards to what they see, looking at the horizon coming for us, to prepare, rightfully so in a way. In regards to what you just said, we are both from Germany. From an early age, like the Second World War has been something that I feel has been part of our story, in a way. What is your take on the idea that the longer intervals we have between wars, the bigger the next one is going to be? Do you think like humanity is heading towards something like a Third World War?
I don't know if it's going to be a world war, but I think AI will have a lot to do with that. We'll figure out what happens in societies that have already been squeezed for decades now.
Yeah.
We already see it in your generation even more than with me, that cost of living has been going up drastically for people. They don't have savings. They don't have a community infrastructure anymore. They have been unrooted. They're already overweight. They're squeezed. They're squeezed by the medical industry. They're squeezed by the food industry. They overspend. They're not resilient. I mean, COVID was the best example that our society overall is not resilient at all, because we squeezing every member of society. In Bali, COVID was a very different experience. People went back to their villages and they came back out when it was over. Nobody here got sick. Like nobody in our entire community, 50,000 people, not a single person got sick of COVID, because we live a very different lifestyle. There should have been a massive field study. So we see that our societies are already highly divided, squeezed, tired, ready to break, especially in the US. I was just back there 6 weeks ago. I mean, that thing could blow up any minute if you ask me. So I think something major will happen. If it's going to be in the way of a world war, I have no idea. I think we will have a massive fallout with millions and millions of people losing their jobs. I would say probably about 50% of all the jobs that we currently think are safe will turn out to be useless within the next 5 years.
Who's going to be safe? How can we adapt to the changes that are coming?
I have no idea.
Okay.
So my answer to that is really just it's probably better to be in the game than out of the game.
Yeah.
So that's what I'm doing. Maybe we also are looking for a period of time of incredible growth. Like maybe we're going to have 2-3 years of economic boom before it goes bust.
Yeah.
Again, I'm terrible at predicting those things. I do see that there's a very high chance within my lifetime, at least, we're going to have a massive disruption. And now the question, like, what do we teach my children, for example, in schools? What skills we're still going to need? Very hard to answer.
Thank you for trying so anyway. And I think I got the gist of it. Let's move on to the last part of this question, because I know you're running on a clock. The last part of the answer questionnaire is called Eternity Questionnaire. It's inspired by my company, which uses artificial intelligence in order to resurrect and preserve human beings in a way by creating humanoid avatars. So the first question of this is a quote you try to live by. I feel we all got one or two of those slogans that mean more to us than others.
Nothing worth doing is easy.
Oh. How did you come about this wisdom? How does it speak to you?
It's just my experience. First, I mean, from a biochemistry perspective, we know that's true. Like, the more you struggle to achieve something, the more you're going to value it.
True.
It's a deep fundamental.
True.
The second thing is, life is just hard.
Yeah.
So if you just always go for the easy way out, you're probably going to eat crappy food. You're going to not go to the gym. You're not going to foster your relationships. You're not going to start a new company.
Yeah.
You're not going to take new risks. It's all hard.
Yeah.
But I think the reason why, or one of the main reasons why countries are so depressed, like the U.S. at this point, as I see it, is that we have been trying to do less and less. Everything has been based more convenience, faster shipping, all these kind of things, more and more and more convenience. People are not willing to put the effort in to get the meaningful things done that matter to them, and even worse, they don't even know anymore what matters to them. Yeah. Because achieving those things is just not easy. It takes to make tough choices, and you might have to cut people out of your life. You might have to change your life completely. You might have to leave your hometown. You might figure out that where you're based, you can't find the opportunities you need. Most people don't do that. But really achieving anything that's worth living is will not be an easy process. The idea that you just win in the lottery, all your problems go away, or you get investment by a VC fund and suddenly your life is happily ever after, it's a myth.
Yeah, I tend to catch myself when I say, if I only had this, then I would be good. I try to remind myself.
It doesn't work like this.
It doesn't remind you. If you could resurrect any person from history, in order to learn something from them, who would you choose and what would you ask them?
I wouldn't resurrect anybody.
Nobody?
No, it's stupid.
It's stupid?
Yeah.
Interesting. Okay. Let's move to the next question. So you're not in fond of the idea of like engaging conversations with people from the past? If we can use this with artificial
we probably
intelligence?
Would be terribly disappointed.
Yes?
Yes.
Oh, never meet your idols. Okay. Oh, interesting.
But I don't really even have idols. I mean, that's just they've done their contribution. I think they're done. Just leave them be. This is in the past.
Huh. Interesting. Okay. What is something you believe that other people think is crazy?
I think my strongest point, you don't have to be successful to be happy. Huh. With my background, because it so goes against everything I've done in my life.
Yeah.
It's a core belief.
We've spoken a little bit about death, and this is the last question. The entire company that I'm building right now is motivated by mortality and the idea of that it gives purpose to life. If we would fast forward, hopefully, far, far into the future at your funeral, what do you want to be remembered for?
I mean, as far as I'm concerned, they can just shovel me into the somewhere into a ditch. I really don't give a shit, to be honest.
The best answer I've given in 48 interviews. I love this.
I really, okay.
Yeah.
Just be done with me. Maybe my children will still think that I'm amusing, but people take themselves so serious and think honestly they have so much to contribute and that they're so amazing. I think I've talked enough.
Uh-huh. So if I would ask you, like, for the epitaph, the engravings on your vault, you wouldn't choose any?
I would just. I mean, if the avatar would be alive, like fully conscious,
the idea is like
I have limbs and I can have sex and I can live my body life, I would totally be there. But it's really not a focus on my focus is really to stay as healthy and happy and living experiences as deeply as I can for the time that I'm around.
Yeah. That
I really, if you switch me off tomorrow, had an amazing run.
Wow, that's a beautiful notion. I hope this doesn't happen, AI takes over, and this is the last media contribution from you, and you have the ability to create a time capsule for one message to the world. What do you think? What would you choose to convey? What would be your last
I would just reach out to my daughters and say that I love them all. I don't get to see them all the time. One of them I don't get to see at all.
Yeah.
And they matter to me, and it's very meaningful to me. And the rest I blabbed in my life, just to put in the ditch.
It was an honor to talk to you today. I will not leave you off this podcast because without asking you, a lot of people listen to this. How can we help you, and where can we find you?
I mean, I'm easy to be found. I think I got 45,000 things on Google somewhere. I'm quite easy. JulienUhlig.co is my homepage.
Yeah.
So the company that I'm building right now, Live Life, again, very, very personal to me because it kind of sums up my life's journey. So I think you don't have to take every expensive step along the way that I've experienced to get to that point.
Yeah.
And again, reach out. I mean, I'm a very social guy. When you're in Bali, say hi. I really do that. I'm a little bit like the Bali ambassador. When people come, I tell them which restaurant to go and everything. And it's just, I'm fine. I'm good.
It was an honor to have you on the show. Thank you for being so generous with your time, attention, and wisdom. To you guys out there, thank you for making room for this episode to learn together with me from this world-leading experts. See you in the next episode.